Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. Finally getting to do live Q&A. I haven't done one of these in a long time, so I wanted to connect with you guys and see where everything is. Anyway, it's been a while. I'm going to be looking at all of the questions that are coming in, and maybe talk about Roger Ver and all that stuff. That was quite interesting. There's a lot about that I want to talk about, I guess. All right. So, what is your favorite Bitcoin story, either fiction or reality? Well, I mean, there's a lot of Bitcoin stories, but one that kind of sticks out for me right now is something that Alan Rayner told me a while back. So he was working on Armory, and he was coding it. I think this was in maybe early 2013, maybe 2012, something like that. He was working on it, trying to create Armory, and he's going through all of these different parts of the code, and he's trying to make sure that it can parse blocks correctly and Coinbase transactions in particular. So he's working on it, and then he's like testing it against the mainnet just to make sure that it gets it right. And all of a sudden, he sees a Coinbase transaction with sort of like a null output. So he's like, "What the hell?" And it caused all sorts of bugs in his thing. He thought it was a bug, and he tracked it down, and it wasn't a bug. So he was like, "What's going on?" And he goes onto like the Bitcoin Talk forums. It turned out that Mark Karpelès had tried to mine something, but the address he sent it to was like an address that didn't exist. And he was just sort of like, "Oh, well, there goes like a month's worth of profit," or something like that. So for me, that's kind of something that's pretty funny. It's kind of an interesting little thing. All right, let's take a look at some of this other stuff. How many Bitcoins do you hold? I never talk about exactly how many. Best ETA for Schnorr. I think it comes out in SegWit version 1. We're right now on SegWit version 0, and that's the very first one, along with maybe non-dir signatures, just straight up RNS. That'll save about 7 bytes per input that's signed. But Schnorr, I think it'll be in version 1, maybe version 2. I think that's still maybe like 6 to 8 months away, something like that. But who knows? It really depends on who codes it and how it gets through and everything like that. All right. What else is there? It says here, when will you be awarding scholarships? I usually do them about a week or two before the actual seminar. So, I mean, if you sign up and you pay me and you win a scholarship, I just refund your money. That's generally how I do it. What was your best moment with Roger Ver on the cruise? I think the best moment was like my 10-minute opener. That I think I pretty much nailed my arguments there. The worst moment was right before, well, not right before, but about 20 minutes before we were supposed to go on, like before all of the video went on, he and like 8 of his employees just like sort of ambushed me. And, there was a guy with a video camera. There's a bunch of his employees that were just there sort of like, like this. And and he started asking me these questions. He was totally sea-lining. You and I have been very polite and cordial and all that stuff. And every time I would just be like, why do you have all these people, blah, blah, blah. And he would just kind of be like, wait, what, don't yell at me, blah, blah, blah. I'm being cordial, blah, blah, blah. It was very much like a sea lining kind of thing. I did not appreciate that. And I actually like, cause he was just like, how about we do a vote of who won the debate? And I'm like, dude, you have like at least 8 guys here. And I saw like at least 20 other people with like Bitcoin.com or Bitch Please t-shirts. So I was like, you've totally stacked the audience. And he's like, I didn't stack the audience. I only brought, I'm like, how many employees? There's like 8. Well, there you go. He's like, but it's not as many as you said. And he like started bringing over somebody and like asking them, are you associated with me in any way? Like just sort of like very TMZ, very, oh gosh, it bothered me a lot because essentially he made it about people and not about the ideas. And I'm more interested in the ideas. I don't care about discrediting Roger per se. I am interested in discrediting Bitcoin Cash as the real Bitcoin or whatever. That's not the case. So I wanted to argue against that. I don't really care too much about what people think of Roger per se. It's more about the idea and like what makes Bitcoin good, what makes Bitcoin Cash not good. That's what I wanted to argue about. And I wish that he had sort of debated me on those terms, but unfortunately he did not. What is the book about? The book is Programming Bitcoin. It's basically the seminar that I've been teaching in book form. Some people learn better that way, and it's my goal to train a lot of Bitcoin developers. I've done about 400 in the past year, so that's what I'm trying to do. I would really appreciate your perspective on communism, whatever is pertinent to you, but maybe decentralization in particular. Well, communism is weird, right? Because they're trying to take out money from the system, and all forms of socialism essentially try to do that. They try to take out money because they see money as like this evil or something like that, and that's not even the phrase, right? Like, money is not the root of all evil. Love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and that's a very different thing than saying that money is the root of all evil. So in a way, it's just it's a way of trying to do a system without price signals or anything like that. And every human society that's tried that usually does not succeed. And that's putting it mildly. Many communist governments have murdered way more people than any war. So, I mean, that's saying a lot. There's been a lot of wars and a lot of people have died in those. But I mean, you compare that to like the 50 million that like Stalin killed and like 30 million that Mao killed. And I mean, it gets worse and worse. And part of that is just, power tends to concentrate when you take out money. Money is in many ways like a great equalizer, because you get, at least in a pure market economy, you get power or you get money in proportion to the goods and services that you provide that's wanted by other people. And that's a decent proxy for how much value you're adding. But in a communist or socialist system, it just accrues to a single person or an individual, and they have absolute power, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You can't really get around that. You can't distribute power just by say so or by fiat. It doesn't work that way. This is why I believe Bitcoin's much better, because you are taking that central power and you're decentralizing it, and I think that's a lot more effective and better for civilization. All right, let's take a look at the live chat. There's quite a few people in there. Any Bitcoin lovers? I hope so. Let's see. Best way to help Bitcoin adoption. Buy it. That's about it. The more people, so a lot of people don't recognize that scarcity is a network effect, and that ends up being very, very interesting, because when you think about collectibles and things like that, the way it sort of spreads is beyond all proportion of people that actually collect it because of the value of the collection. So, for example, this is the example I usually give is of Picasso paintings, right? Like, a lot of people do appreciate Picasso and his, whatever he did, but a lot of people also don't. But as long as there are some people that actually value it for what it is, that's enough for other people to say, well, that might be a good investment. I mean, similar things happen with anything that's actually scarce, is that as long as some people value it and you can and it's somewhat liquid, that's good enough for people to value it for its own, for just scarcity's sake. And that's kind of what's happening with Bitcoin. That's actually what's happened in Bitcoin and what gave it its value in the first place. There were enough people that valued it just for its scarcity that other people started valuing it for its scarcity, and that sort of snowballs. So the best thing that you can do is to buy more of it, right? Like, and as people see that you want it, that gives them assurance that, oh, okay, if I buy this thing, it's not going to like go straight to zero because there are enough believers in the currency. So I think that's the most important thing. And scarcity being a network effect, it tends to snowball, and more people start using it as a store of value. And eventually, like after a long period of time, when enough people value it as a store of value, then it becomes a method of payment. This is one of the arguments that I actually wanted to make with Roger. Unfortunately, he didn't want to engage at that level. All right, thoughts on the Winklevoss stablecoin? I think stablecoins have a trilemma that they're trying to get all 3 points on: independent monetary policy, free capital flows, and a peg. And you can't have all 3. That's the central banker's trilemma. And it's clearly an independent, thing, unless it's fully backed by the U.S. dollar, in which case it's more like Tether, in which case it's backed by like reserves or whatever, and proving that and auditing that has been a problem, or you have AML KYC laws. So I don't know. Either way, it doesn't really work, I don't think. Is crypto for everyone? No, probably not. No. A lot of people just don't understand how it works. I think you need to at least have a good idea of how things work before you can really invest in it with some amount of assurance. All right. Why doesn't Roger Ver ever talk about the tech of B-Trash? He always just says it's better, never how it's better and why it will work. I mean, they have a different focus, right? They think that method of payment is like the big thing. My personal view is that that's kind of a very misguided thing. And I made this analogy a few days ago. Basically, there are two sort of strategies if you're like sort of like a young heterosexual male and you want to ask a girl out on a date or something like that. You can just sort of like improve yourself. That would be more like the store of value method. Or you can just keep telling her how awesome you are and why don't you date her, date me, that sort of thing. Now that might work on a couple of girls or whatever, but generally people don't respond to that very well. They almost feel like they're being sold on something instead of like actually you proving value. You prove value by store like keeping it and wanting to keep it. If you're just constantly talking to them about how awesome it is and how you should accept it, people get a little bit suspicious. They're like, why, if it's so valuable, why do you want to like dump it on me? That doesn't make any sense. And they have to want it on their own before you can do that. And similar to dating, right? Like you can't make them say yes. You can't make them desire you. That's not how people work. You have to get them to want it on their own first. And enough people did that during the run up last year that like Bitcoin kept going up and up. But like you can't make somebody want you. You can only really control your own desires or your own self. And the more you value Bitcoin just on its own as a store of value, the more other people will want it. And at that point, when they really want it, is when merchants will start demanding it, and they'll stop accepting a lot of the other coins or payment methods, and they'll demand it in Bitcoin. That's when it moves towards method of payment, not any time before then. And that's something to definitely think about. All right, Dennis Gimberson. First of all, thank you for 100 Swedish kroner, I think. I don't even know how much that is. But regarding the scaling debate, I guess it's a signature part that can be max 1 megabyte. No, it's not the signature part. It's just the entire block. Before SegWit, it was the entire block, including block header, and then a var for the number of transactions, and then every serialized transaction in that block. The total could be at most 1 megabyte. And after SegWit, it's by block weight, and that's a calculation that I wrote up a year ago or so. You can go take a look at it. How do you see that as being part of a well, so I have a video coming out later this week about submarine swaps. I'm really excited about submarine swaps. I think it'll provide significant scalability on top of Lightning, or to Lightning. It's sort of like a way to refill your Lightning channel whenever you need, and that might very well be like a way to do things via sidechain and Lightning. That could be really, really cool. All right, let's see some other ones. So thank you. Let's see. All right, do we really need an ETF? No. I mean, Bitcoin's just sort of on like ETF just makes things convenient. Again, like it's kind of like like with the girl and dating thing, like just like sort of being around and asking everywhere she goes, like, hey, you want to date me? Hey, you want to date me? Hey, that's not necessarily going to work. It's when investors actually really want the asset, that's when that's what causes the increase in price. Now there are plenty of people just sort of curious, and maybe for those people it'll make a slight bit of difference. But again, that's a very short-term thing. Long-term, people will get in if they really want to get in. If they don't want to get in, then they won't. And ETF, I mean, changes people on the margin, but I don't think that's that many people. All right. Luke Dash Jr. tweeted, government could effectively stop Bitcoin today if they wished. He's made similar. I mean, it's hard to say what the government could do versus what they would do versus what they will do. And, I mean, Luke, I think has like a very technical mindset. He thinks through like sort of these low probability scenarios, and he goes through all of the coulds, and that's what makes him an excellent engineer. Is that actually going to happen? I don't think so. I mean, could they effectively shut down? Of course, yeah. I mean, they can just like go with a gun and like arrest everybody. I mean, that'll probably shut down a significant portion, and they can extradite miners and stuff like that. I mean, there are ways in which they can be very authoritarian and, of course, stop a lot of what's going on. Would they do that, or will they do that? I really, really, really doubt it. And there would be all sorts of upheaval, and I mean, it's kind of like that level of authoritarianism is typically what leads to revolution. All right, let's see what else here. All right, I have Kira Mosquita. What Bitcoin technical development are you looking forward to the most? Submarine swaps look really, really interesting to me, and they involve Lightning and on-chain swaps. You can basically refill your Lightning channel without necessarily going on-chain even. And I mean, if you fill it with like Litecoin or something like that, that would be even crazier. But you can do it, and that's something that I've been following, trying to see how that will play out. But it's got some really cool potential. All right, let's see. Let's see. Let's see. What do you think about Bech32 SegWit? Native SegWit is pretty cool. I think people will eventually move to it. Although like with SegWit version 1, Schnorr signature, stuff like that, I'm sure it will have sort of like BC2 or something like that, some other type of address. So Bech32, I imagine, will continue to be a thing. It's really more about the market. It's not the technical stuff is absolutely pure and good. It's about getting people to actually use it. All right. Sweet hat, thank you. I got this in Yosemite. It's got like holes at the top to make it like nice and cool, but you still get shade on the back of your neck and stuff. I love these hats. It's great for outdoors. Does carnivore involve insects? I suppose. I don't really eat insects, but I suppose that could be good. Can you explain to a non-tech person how the Bitcoin source code is managed? Who gets to decide what to publish or what is not? Good question. So the way things work is by consensus. So say you have a feature that you want to add or something like that. And assuming that you have enough cachet with the Bitcoin developers, or you've reviewed enough stuff and you put in a pull request, some people will review it. Now, getting people to review your stuff is not something that you can just sort of do like first time coming in. You need it's a lot of work to review stuff, and they're not just going to review it unless like there's reason to believe that what you actually submitted is worth reviewing. So typically, the thing that people tell you is go review other people's code as a way to build up some goodwill among the developers and stuff, and they they can sort of tell whether or not you're a good developer or not. And if you do that enough times, then they'll review your code. And say they review your code, they think it's good, or they want some changes or whatever. There's some back and forth. You might have to write more tests or change certain things, or they might just be like, you know what, I don't think this is a useful feature. It causes all these vulnerabilities or whatever. But if it's good and you get enough reviewers, then it's if it's a consensus change, it needs a lot more reviewers. But if it's a non-consensus change, you typically need like 2 or 3 reviewers to look at the code and say, okay, well, this stuff is good. At that point, one of the maintainers will will probably merge it after just like making sure that it's not crazy. But if it's got some level of consensus, it gets merged into the code base and gets into the next release. If not, if there's still sort of conflict or people are arguing about something, they'll just sort of leave it alone until there's some consensus. Usually it's the burden of making it the way that the reviewers want it is on the part of the coder, the person that created the pull request. So you have to satisfy a lot of people, and it's more or less done by consensus. Now, once in a while, like the people that are reviewing, like they have different levels of reputation too. So it depends on some of that too. But yeah, if it's a big enough change, you'll see Greg Maxwell, Peter Woolley review it or something like that. But it's entirely dependent on your sort of merit in the community, your how much you've already contributed and stuff like that. And the judgment call is at the end is made by the maintainer, but they're usually out of the process until there's some level of consensus. All right, let's see here. Where was I? What would you think about a coin that has no actual blockchain in which you can transfer your coins onto any compatible blockchain? Would that be a good path? I'm not sure what that question actually means. All right, let's see. Do you dislike Andreas? No, I love Andreas. Yeah, I already said submarine swaps. Why would any government or any officials accept Bitcoin while 10-20% hold with Satoshi? I mean, that's not an interesting question. Let's see. Favorite hardware wallet? I mean, I don't know. All of them have good points and bad points. I would say they're all much better than like I mean, other than like a cold wallet setup or something like that, they're pretty good, and good enough. I think eventually the security on those will get better. All right, let's see here. Do you want to be You want to be in charge of your own life, but what about religion? Doesn't it control your life too, just like sports, news, etc.? Well, yeah, of course, but that's voluntary. I want it to be that way. If you believe in God, if you believe that God exists, and you believe that that He cares about you, then of course, like you kind of want that, like logically speaking. Now, if you don't believe God exists, then yeah, but I mean, in a sense, you have to live by some code or morals or something. If you're living with no restrictions on your life whatsoever, it's kind of like this Nietzschean will to power sociopathic life, which that doesn't appeal to me at all. So either way, you're sort of controlled by something, whether it's a goal that you have or by like some moral code. I mean, you have to choose something. You can't have no principles or like moral code or something like that. All right, so let's see. I answered those. All right. There's a lot of discussion going on. Do you really believe BTC is the one? If so, why don't you take that bet with Roger? I'm negotiating the bet with Roger at the moment, and he hasn't written back after the latest proposal. We'll see. He one thing I will tell you is that he wants it to be in $1 million USD. So it's not denominated in Bitcoin. So 10 years from now, he wants to just pay in crypto, but the equivalent amount in USD. All right, let's see. Let's see what else. Differences SegWit versus native SegWit. So nested SegWit is backwards compatible. These are addresses that start with a 3. Native SegWit starts with BC1, and it's a little bit less expensive from a block space perspective to use native. Debate stuff bothering you from an objective standpoint? Yeah, not a very interesting question. Let's see. Where are we? Why should I trust your economic opinions when I doubt any economist will agree with how you apply the terms fiat or gains? Yeah, go look up the definition of fiat before you castigate me on the definition of fiat. Like the literal definition is like money that cannot be converted to specie, like some metal or something like that. That's because that was the first instance of a fiat money. There's been many more since then. It's a broader term. If you don't agree with my definition, then go listen to somebody else. But I don't expect you to agree with me on everything. I'm just expressing my own opinion. If you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. That's fine. I don't want to. I don't want people that don't agree with me to agree with me. I'm just expressing myself. Sometimes that helps people, sometimes that doesn't. All right. Let's see what else. Do you know of a good Bitcoin debate between two respectable Austrians, one in favor and one against? I don't. I mean, I guess Voorhees versus Schiff maybe, but I don't know. Thoughts on Rootstock? I don't really have an opinion. In the future, will people be able to use Lightning Network without opening a channel? For example, withdraw your Satoshis from an exchange via Lightning Network without sending them to an address? Probably. Depends on the exchanges, but certainly that's a possibility. In your opinion, what? So Audrius, thank you for your 10 CHF. What are the biggest risks for Bitcoin? How could it fail? Great answer about relation. Thanks. Biggest risk for Bitcoin, again, like developers. I think that's still the biggest risk. There just aren't that many, and sort of getting more of them into the pipeline, I think, is my main goal, and that's for me the biggest thing, and that's what I'm working towards. With this book, with the seminars, all that stuff. All right, let's see your thoughts on atomic swaps and people being able to spend whatever tokens, coins they feel are the most valuable to them. I mean, I guess they're useful. Atomic swaps are very useful because you can swap between them. But I think the bigger utilities with side chains, it allows quick back and forth. But I don't know. We'll see. Do you wear your boots in the swimming pool? No. So what do you do for a living? All right, let's see. Can you name a fiat money that was not dictated as money? Yeah, sure. I think I believe Flues was one. Yeah. So the bet is going to be for 1 million USD. It's $1 million in the future whenever the bet settles. Why does everyone hate fiat cars? All right, so I think that's about it, and we've been going for a while now. I think it's that's been about 30 minutes. I enjoyed your questions. I mean, we could talk about other stuff, but I have not visited Japan, and I'm kind of sad that I'm not getting to go to Scaling Bitcoin, because I think Mark Friedenbach's talk I am so curious about. He's talking about changing proof of work and adding like enormous transaction capacity on chain as a soft fork. So, I mean, I don't know what that is, but whatever it is, what percentage of the devs you've trained already contribute to Core? I'm not sure actually, but I know there's at least a few. Might be a lot more than that. A lot of them don't end up telling me, but I like there's been a lot more people like contributing to Core in the past year or so. I feel like if I contributed even a little bit to that, that's always a good thing. How long will we be holding for? I will be holding for a very long time in the long term. I mean, will I be handing down Bitcoin to my kids? Possibly. I mean, this is one of those questions like, how much do you want to leave to your kids, and how much do you want them to sort of earn things on their own? I had a friend back in high school that came from a pretty well-off family, and he ended up going to college. And one of the things that he did, I think, like it was like his sophomore year, he told his parents, you know what, please stop paying my tuition. I'm gonna try to do it on my own. And for me, that was pretty impactful, because I was like, wow, that's the way to raise a kid. Like, he didn't want that entitlement. He wanted it. He wanted to make it on his own. And I don't know. I would be a little bit sad, but I would also be enormously proud if my kids wanted to make it on their own and not feel like entitled to whatever wealth it was that I had accumulated. Now, I mean, obviously, I want them to succeed and things like that. But it's tough, because for a lot of people, if you just sort of leave them money, then they just sort of kind of get lazy about it. And it depends on like what you think of their character, and how they handle things. Like, are they going to do good with the money that you give them, or are they just going to spend it on Lambos, right? Like, and this is the thing that you always hope for as a parent, is that you raise them in a way that they have the character to be able to handle that kind of money. Not everyone does well when given a sudden burst of money, and not everyone has that personality to do that. This is why like most lottery winners just like blow it within 5 years, and then they have nothing again. So it's a lot of, it might be a lot of money by then, and like with great power comes great responsibility. Really, it's more like you can't handle the power unless you are already responsible. So like that to me is like a very tricky question, and it really depends a lot on like how the kids do. I mean, to some degree, yeah, I'll leave them something, but how much of it that I leave to them, and what they'll do with it, these are things that I'm going to have to think very deeply about, because and it depends somewhat on their personality and what they show me, because I don't want to leave lots and lots of money to somebody that's completely irresponsible. Ultimately, you're just setting them up to fail if you do that. So it's a very interesting question, but that's my view on it. Do you want to go on a boating trip with me with only our only copy of private keys on bits of paper? That would be amazing. Yeah, we could have a tragic boating accident, right? Is Bitcoin mining signaling a privilege? Can it be removed from Bitcoin Core? No, I think it's a feature, not a bug. And I've made that point clear, I think, in other videos. Your children will live in a more difficult world. Will they? I don't know. With hard money, I think you end up with a better world. Personally, that's what I think. Less rent seekers and more innovation. Yeah, that this guy just is going on about Core. All right. Has Core's yeah, Truth Monster. Yeah, you're not trolling at all, are you? No, Greg is like if you don't know what Greg is like, then go talk to him. He is like one of the nicest, like most kind-hearted people, and like people make him out to be this like complete troll or whatever. Granted, his online personality is very different than what you see when you talk to him in person. But guys, you don't really know Greg Maxwell, and most people online you don't really know until like you actually meet them. And this is kind of the danger of all the connectedness and social stuff. It's you only see what they show you, and oftentimes people are very very different. In fact, most of the time they're very very different. So anyway, it's something. Can a mining pool be coded into the base Bitcoin protocol? I suppose. I mean, I think Better Hash is a much better solution right now, anyway, and that solves pretty much everything that you want. Anyway, I think it's time. I enjoyed this. There's probably a lot more that I could talk about and go on about for a while, but there's some burgers that I've been smoking in the grill. I want to get them out and try a couple of them. So, I'm gonna have to go. Anyway, this song is done.